and food forest garden designer, and today I am here to talk to you about gardening with UK native wildflowers and why we need to have wildflowers in forest gardens, and in fact in all gardens. This is a repeat of the live stream I did yesterday, but the video camera wasn't working very well, so hopefully it's up to speed now and you can see my face for what that's worth. There's lots of notes in here, so if you go to the slideshow, natureworks.org.uk/talks/garden wildflowers, that's where the slideshow is always kind of be kept, and if you press P on your keyboard, it brings up all the notes which are associated with that. So there's lots of links and stuff in there as well, which is kind of handy. So press P to hide it. Okay, and I'm just going to swap over here. Lovely job. So yes, let's get cracking. So I want to kick off with a photograph of fox and cubs, and this is really, there's kind of two parts to this. Firstly, why are native plants so important for gardens generally and forest gardens in particular, and then the other side is to actually celebrate the beauty of the UK native wildflowers as well. So I kind of here talking about wildflowers, but it extends to shrubs and trees, but I haven't actually done that much work on those yet. So I'm just going to talk around the subject of forest gardens. This is Fox and Cubs, which is a Pilosella aurantiaca, which is a beautiful UK native. I've got it growing in a garden. I planted it for the first time in a client's garden a couple of years ago, and it's done really well. Likes full sun, kind of free draining soil. I planted it, also have it self-seeding in another garden in a load of gravel. It's a gravel with a sheet mulch under it, but it's self-sown. It's gone absolutely everywhere. So yeah, but a very beautiful plant, very kind of hardy UK native. So an outline then of what I want to talk about today. Firstly, what we're here for, which is the nature and climate emergency. Secondly, I want to very quickly go through a definition of what a forest garden is for those people who don't know. Then the case for native plants, why we need to have native plants generally and native wildflowers in a garden. Looking at the reference materials, there's lots of very useful reference material in this talk, and then I'll be talking about my project, which is Garden Wild Plants, which is a not-for-profit company that I've set up specifically to work on projects like this. Okay, so this is a photograph from Chris, a friend of mine, Chris, and this is her place, and in Wales. And these are bluebells and pignuts. Bluebells aren't edible, but pignuts are edible. They're a bit fiddly. Conopodium majus. They're the white flowers here, but they are a little bit fiddly to eat. But they are UK native, and they're called pignuts because they're like the tubers like little nuts, and the pigs like them. So reminder, first of all, this is a nature and climate emergency, and in case you didn't know what that looked like, this is a photograph from a couple of years ago in Germany, mass flooding, and it's getting worse, and we need to be very conscious of that fact and to actually take action. And by taking action, it means stop using fossil fuels. Yeah, make the transition away from fossil fuels. Like stop drilling for new oil. It's pretty straightforward. And also to bolster up and to make more resilient the society that we have. For example, we should insulate Britain. Really, it's amazing how there is a lack of political will to do this, and this would save individuals money and save the whole of society money, and it would just save vast amounts in terms of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. It's a bit of a no-brainer, but obviously it's not a no-brainer enough. Anyway, pretty flower, greatest stitchwort, UK native, obviously, grows in great big sways and big drifts. I've got quite a bit around here, like it's kind of part shade in kind of hedgerows, really, like by the side of the road and verges, and it comes up earlier on in the year. There's a lesser stitch work which is more kind of prevalent later on in the year, and it's once it gets established, it's really really beautiful. There's this kind of great big wafts of it, like white kind of explosion. Really lovely plant. So on to the forest garden. What is a forest garden? Now, Martin Crawford, who is the grandfather of forest gardening, has a business down in the UK, down in Devon, and he's written lots of books and knows an awful lot. And is an absolutely fantastic chap. And the title of his book is Creating a Forest Garden. It's a kind of famous book, and the subtitle is Working with Nature to Grow Edible Crops. Really straightforward. And that's where I got the name for my business from, Working with Nature. Nature works. And what you're doing with the garden, as you can see from the photograph, this is a still from Thomas Regnow's film of Martin's garden in Devon, which was entered into to National Geographic, and there's a link to it in the notes. And what you can see is emulating the edge of woodland. It's not like deep woodland, it's not deep shade, because you want to have enough light coming through for the understory. There's a living ground cover, which is you're always keeping you're always permanently keeping the ground covered. There's never any gaps. It's not like annual vegetables where you have lots of gaps and do lots of weeding. You want a living ground cover to fill up those gaps and it provides habitat, but also prevents water loss, locks in more nutrients into the soil. And what we're aiming for is to have a natural pest control and fertility. And what this means is, by creating an ecosystem, what you're doing is creating an edible ecosystem. By creating an ecosystem, you're inviting insects into your garden, and then you are, by default, then you are inviting in the predators on those insects, and you keep a balance. And this is what we're after. There's less work for you to do because nature is doing the work. You have, I think it's called integrated pest control. It's like an agricultural term, but it's the same kind of thing. You don't want to be applying chemicals to the land. You want to have insects and predators and mammals and birds that eat those insects that would otherwise totally wipe out your crop. So you're getting it into balance. This is the whole kind of purpose of a forest garden. And it's lower maintenance, and it's a much lower input in terms of energy. So yes, it's a way to go. Obviously, I would say that because I am a forest gardener, but we are living in a time of a nature and climate emergency. So we need to have more resilient food systems too. Bottom line is that this means agroforestry. This means on a larger scale outside of the garden. This means growing tree crops, because tree crops are far more able to deal with the extremes of weather that we are seeing currently. So if you've got tree crops and a diversity of tree crops, you're better protected in terms of food supply. So yeah, there we go. Wild garlic. Lots of wild garlic around here. I live in West Wales, by the way. Very wet. And there's down by the river, part shade, kind of damp soil, gets washed out in the winter. There's loads and loads of wild garlic down there, and you'll see it in the spring, and it comes and again just like a mass of white flowers, and the smell of garlic as well. And they're edible too. You can eat the leaves. You don't need to cook them very long. You just add them in at the end of the cooking. And they have a strong garlic flavour. So forest gardening for me really is it's convergent gardening. It operates at the intersection between a wildlife garden, an edible garden, and an ornamental garden, and it kind of can combine all three aspects of that. And really, it's what we're trying to do with what we're trying to do with a forest garden is to make it resilient, so that resilience comes from working with nature, comes from creating a wildlife garden. That is part of the resilience that allows you to grow crops in a low maintenance fashion. Now the ornamental aspect comes in because you can make it look enticing, inviting as well. And actually I think it's really, really important to do this, because the better looking a garden is, and the more inviting it is to humans, then the more likely they are to spend time in that space. So it's very much worth doing it. And this is why I think native wildflowers are so important, because people very often will go, oh, well, they're just flowers, but actually they're a foodstuff. They're visually attractive into our kind of culture's way of looking at things, but they're also very productive in terms of supporting different ecosystems. And I'll come on to some resources to highlight that in a second. This is Oxeye Daisy, very big, kind of meter or so high, robust. As you can see here, will grow in a standard grass. Kind of very, very beautiful. Later on in the year, I think I have got reference to kind of cross-reference all these dates and things. So the case for native plants. So this is really the bottom line is native plants have co-evolved with wildlife. And that means that, and this really comes down to insects and the larvae of insects, and they are much, much more likely to eat native plants than they are non-native plants. They're a better foodstuff for a wider range and a wider diversity of insects than non-native plants. So that's why we grow native plants, because they're part of the ecosystem. They can't be just swapped out with non-natives. Now, in a forest garden, obviously a large number of plants that are in edible plants that are in a forest garden are non-native. But what my whole the rule of thumb that I have is to use native plants where possible. So there's lots of situations where you can do this. So if you have a windbreak hedge, for example, use a mixed native hedgerow plants rather than non-native. If you're growing a ground cover, use a native ground cover like ground ivy, Glaucoma heteracea, for example, or Ramsden's wild garlic, Allium ursinum. Use native plants rather than non-native plants where you can, where it makes, where it's easier to do that, where it fits in. But always kind of you're looking at using a bulk, because we want to encourage the insects more, as much the flowers, the fruit, and the habitat. And that's all of those are important as well for the pollinators and for the larger animals. But it's the leaf food which is a kind of critical thing. You're providing food for insects. You want insects for that food web to create that ecosystem. So that's what we're aiming at, the edible ecosystem, and that's why native plants are so important. There's a chap called Benjamin Vogt who's a brilliant native plant gardener in America. Oh, I can't remember where he is. Prairie sort of land over in America. Very different, obviously different plants. The plants we grow in the UK, it's a different country, but the same principles apply. And if you want to have a look at the issues about gardening with native plants, have a look at his book, A New Garden Ethic. And then also Doug Tallamy, Backyard. Oh, crikey. Oh, he's brilliant. He's a naturalist, entomologist, a proponent of wildlife gardening over in the States. Really, really good. Lots of different projects going on. Check him out as well, and his books. So what we're trying to do is fill your garden with life. And here's some prunella. The ones with the kind of cones are Prunella vulgaris, self-heal. Yeah, self-heal. And then you've got the red clover, nitrogen fixing, red clover. And there's a white clover down there as well. So that one there. Bees absolutely love it. Well, they love most native plants, to be honest. So that's why you should be planting native plants in your forest garden and in your garden if you haven't got a forest garden. The reference for this, and this is UK specific. There will be books whichever country that you're in. This is Harrop's Wildflowers. It's brilliant. It's a field guide, and it's not all UK and Ireland's wildflowers, but it's kind of the main ones, the vast majority of them. And it's great because it's a field guide. It's small, it's lightweight, it's very well written actually, and it just gives you like the identifying characteristics for the plants, so that you can quickly get a handle on them for using in your own garden. The other brilliant resource is the Plant Atlas. I think this is the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland. and that's a website that's more botanical, so it's not kind of not really gardening, like and then more kind of forest gardening-y stuff is Plants for a Future, a brilliant resource. It's a database of like whole thousands and thousands of plants across the world, like useful plants for all sorts of different harvests and uses and medicinal uses and all sorts of things. So really good. I use it an awful lot for my own work and for the spreadsheets that I've created. And then on the more ornamental side, there's the RHS Plant Finder, online plant finder, and there is a native filter on that too. So you can actually use a native filter to find the flowers that you're interested in, the plants that you're interested in. And kind of backing these all up is a database of insects and food plants and their food plants. This is brilliant. This is absolutely, it's a fantastic website. It lists all the known associations between a particular species of native plant, native to the UK, and the known associations with all the insects, and it lists all the insects associated with that plant. It's fascinating, and I know very little about invertebrates, about insects, but it's absolutely it's mind blowing. Just there's so much information in there. It's really old school. It hasn't been updated by the looks of it for years, but it's still a brilliant resource. And then talking of resources in that vein, Wikimedia Commons. Do go and have a look at that. This is photographs mostly of. I use it for an awful lot for plants, for native plants, and they're all free to use. They all have an open license, what's called a Creative Commons license or an open license, so that you're free to use them. You don't have to pay someone money to use them. Normally you give people credit for them. So this is a a big old list, and really useful if you ever get into designing plants or you're interested in finding out about UK native wildflowers. That'll get you on the right track to get going. Okay, so Rose Bay Willow Herb. I didn't talk about Garden Wild. I'll talk about the Garden Wild plants. See in a minute. This is Chris's garden again. Rose Bay Willow Herb likes disturbed areas. I think kind of more full sun, when I've seen it right off the top of my head, and it grows quite tall, and you get big stands of it as well, and it has all the kind of fluffy bits at the end. But just it is it's a beautiful plant. And then this is a photograph from in Hereford, a field in Hereford, and for me this kind of sums up the beauty of native wildflowers, just the kind of diversity of different flowers, totally by accident in an arable field that's been left fallow for a year. Absolutely incredible. And then a quote from T.S. Eliot from the poem Little Gidding. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And this sums up for me arriving back at native plants that we've had all along and totally ignored in gardening, pretty much totally ignored in gardening in the UK for years and years, and that's about time that we came back and we just rediscovered them for their uses and for their beauty and for their habitat value and their insect value in so many different ways. I think this is the time, in the time of a nature and climate emergency, this is the time for exploring native plants. I think this is what we need to be doing. So to help in that, what I've done is create a community interest company. It's like a not-for-profit company called Garden Wild. The original idea behind Garden Wild, there's a link to the website there, was to create an ornamental wildflower gallery, and I made an application for grant funding to do it. And there's a demo of it working. I didn't get the funding, which is a real pain. It's like an ongoing project, slow burn in the background. But there are some, I am kind of still working on it. So if anybody wants to throw me a few tens of thousands of pounds, and I will actually go and do that. That'd be a fantastic little project to get going. But there is stuff. I've got the foundation for the work in there. So what it's actually being used for now is more about creating community forest gardens, wildlife community forest gardens. And what the tack that I've taken is to explore the use of setting up allotments, because allotments are, firstly, they're a community space and they're growing edible crops, but it's a perfect situation where you can design that space for wildlife as well, by the use of the infrastructure, by the design of the infrastructure, and the use of the plants in that infrastructure and the native plants that you're putting into there. So creating windbreaks, planting nitrogen fixing trees like Italian alders or common alders, depending on the space that you have, to provide nutrients, use of comfrey. There's a whole range of different things that you can do. So this is where Garden Wild is now. It's a vehicle for getting wildlife allotments off the ground. That's the kind of the main focus of it. And this is a ragged robin, which is I think semi-shade, kind of boggier, damp conditions. Beautiful flowers. I mean, quite delicate, but lovely flowers. And then finally, we've got the Garden Wild spreadsheet. And or shall I go to the Garden Wild spreadsheet? There's a list of about 100 different plants here, and they've each got the botanical name, the common name, the family that they're in, perennial, biennial, how big they are, deciduous, evergreen, soil conditions, colour, scent, soil, drought, the whole range of different data. And this is all this information is taken from Plants for a Future, Plant Atlas, and the RHS website as well. And there's even links to how many hosts they have. So, yarrow, Achillea millefolium, has 118 hosts associated with it. And as you can see from the tabs along the bottom, I have got plans to expand it, but at the moment it's just flowers. And I think there's about 100. How many have I got? 99 flowers. So it's just, if you are using it, I won't show you now, but you can actually sort by it as well. This is available for everybody to view, and if you sort it, you can go to data, sort range. There's advanced range sorting options, and you can actually sort by different column headers. So it's brilliant if you want to find out evergreens that are 1/2 metre tall, for example. Very easy way of doing it. Anyway, so that's the sortable online spreadsheet, free sortable online spreadsheet. And then what I'm also doing as well is a series of live streams looking at each individual flower and then using photographs from Commons, Wikimedia Commons, and I'll be talking about those flowers because it's winter time. There's not many flowers around at the moment. Okay, so there we go. I hope you like that, and I hope that's kind of interesting. And do look out then for the next range of live streams that I'm doing, just little live streams which will be about individual flowers. And then there we have it. Hope it's useful. Thank you.